Hey YouTube, we're Marco with Marco Custom Build Models, coming to you today with an update on the 72 Chevrolet Racers Wedge pickup and what I'm doing with it. There's the box, and here's what I've done. So right off the bat you can see that I've made it a single axle dually instead of a tandem, and we'll go through some of the other changes. The car on the back is a 67 Plymouth GTX build that I did in a 24-hour build that you can see in a video if you want, if you go back on a couple videos ago. So this is what I've done and where I'm headed with the project, and everything is basically put together to the point where now I have to just do paint and detail. So all the modifications are done, and this is where I wanted to show you where I'm at. So we can remove the car on the back because it's not needed. I just wanted to use it as a demonstration purpose on how well a model fits on the back of this. So we'll just get rid of that. Let me take it off the turntable and show you some of the things. One of the big modifications is turning it from the tandem axle to a single dually, and I'll show you what I've done here. I've put alignment pieces up here as well as in the bottom, so that when you put this on, it actually fits on the truck tight enough you could pick up the model by it, so when you glue it together it's not falling apart. I've also done the same with the cab. You can pick it up. There's these front alignment pins. I'll just get rid of the hood here. The hood I'll talk about too. When you lift this model up, you can take the cab off. I made alignment pins back here that the back of the cab, so that when you slide it forward and on, and it holds the cab in a nice alignment side to side, and so the model fits together nicely. On the back of this, the one modification I recommend if you're building this model are the ramps. The same, basically it was an extension of the ramps that the car sits on, and they were very wide. They show here that the ramps actually fit underneath here, and of course this is a different length, but anyway, that the ramps fit under here and tuck away, and that doesn't happen in the model. One thing I also want to point out is in the back here it says 1971 on the license plate, and it's a 72, but anyway, they could have just released it as a 71. What I've done was cut off the sides, and I had some angle plastic here. Looks like angle iron, right? Kind of thing. When I cut off the side, I then put this on the entire length of the ramp on both sides, and that made the ramps narrow enough, so it's the same tread width here, made the ramps narrow enough to now fit in the little storage compartment here that they were sort of designed to fit into. And with that, also then I added a little piece of styrene here, so if the model gets picked up, the ramps don't fall out. Okay, so you can still get them out, but they're not going to fall out. Also, they have these little wedges that are designed to hold a model car on, where you can put them in. There's different hole locations here. I opted to fill in the holes that are the furthest up and the furthest back. If you wanted to put a longer car on, yeah, you may want the furthest back ones. Or if an altered wheelbase, you may want the furthest ahead ones, so depending on what you're trying to display. But the average car, I used the middle ones, and all I wanted to do was pop in and out, like this here. Okay, so I just bent up some brass, and it'll just fit in these holes and hold a model car. I opted to use brass instead of the plastic because the little pins on here could just break and then your car could roll off. And I built this model not with a specific car in mind. To me it's kind of like a display stand, so I want to be able to put a model car on. Doesn't necessarily have to be a Chevy, doesn't necessarily have to be a race car. Just building a generic truck that can haul any sort of vehicle. So that's what my goal is with this. One of the things I did too was I built some inner boxes on the ramp part of it. This inner box will then slide up into here and get glued once everything's painted, and I can glue things like model floor jacks or whatever, gas cans, wrenches, toolbox inside. And then these doors would keep on opening when I pick up the model, so I actually made a little metal latch that opens up, and you can now open up the door and see what's inside. So if you wanted to put something like a floor jack inside, Here's a little floor jack I modeled out of a NASCAR kit, AMT, and you can now put that inside there, and you can have some tools and toolboxes, fire extinguisher, that sort of thing, and you can put it in there and latch it closed, and now that stays closed. I also made one for the other side. I made it a little smaller because the door is smaller. Okay, same idea. You can flip up the latch and then open that side door, and you have a compartment cubby there. So what I did to make the latch was I used a little bit of brass and some stainless steel tubing and super glue, and offset a little cam that when you turn it locks into the inside of the body. And I can show you that on the inside. So we can take this off here. Okay, so on the inside you can see that the latch goes and latches in on the side there. Okay, creates a stop and everything. And that's what I've done for this. Now it's not exactly, you know, these hinges on this model are not really to scale. But anyway, I wanted to build this model out of the box as much as possible, and I ended up making some significant changes, and that's where I'm just gonna paint it and put it together. I'm not gonna stress about that. I made a filler piece that went in the back here. As you remember, this was twisted, this whole thing. I put it in boiling water and got it fairly straight, and then once I glued the sides in and everything, I was able to get this sitting pretty good, nice and level with no issues. I also built a tire rack inside, and it was just a simple T-bar. The reason I went with that design was I can put my tires in the front and they won't roll out. If you don't want to put the tires that way, you can stack them this way, and then they can't fall out because of the bar. So that's sort of, if this was a real truck and you wanted to have a little place to put a couple of extra tires there, to me that's what would make the most sense. I also sanded off, there was some compartments back here that I didn't feel were something I wanted to open up or have, so I just took all of that off. I did have an idea for some fender flares. Okay, so what I did for the wheel well, in this Hogan Hero Jeep that I had kicking around, I built my military Jeep out of that, so I didn't use them. There's these fender flares in the kit that would go on if you wanted to put wide tires on it. And they, my original intention was to use these fender flares to finish it off like that, okay? But when I got the body on and I wanted to get my ride height and everything set up, if I put these flares on with the way I have the wheels set up, to me it wouldn't look right, so I ended up not going for this. But if you had the dually wider where you had the tire sticking out, then something like that I think would look nice. But I had to keep this low to be able to use the ramps. If I jack it up like that, for instance, the ramps wouldn't sit right, or I'd have to raise the front end. It would just ruin the whole look of the truck. So I opted not to use these, but I just wanted to show you how those wheel wells came to be the way they did, and I like them. I think they're good, so I'm just going to leave those. I added some pieces in here to align up with the chassis that I had built, which I'll talk about next, and some side supports, because this naturally wants to bow in and sort of not really keep its shape. Been having issues with that, even with this plastic in there, and just putting these supports in with this support, these sides naturally want to come in a little bit, but I'm not worried about it. I'm just got it straightened out the best I can. When I get the boxes in, they fit like that. That's what it looks like with those tool boxes in there from the underside, and I think that looks okay. This panel here had this piece coming out. I cut that off straight. I glued this in there, and I'll show you what I did. If you slide, this panel can still come out here. I'll just pop it out of the bottom. This is that flat panel that goes in on the bottom here. What I did was I added some styrene to finish that off because there would be a hole here. I made it a sort of an end stop instead of it being part of this plate, and this little piece there just to fill it in. I added these thicker pieces of styrene at the base here where I drilled for the brass hoops that can go in there, and I did that to help hold them so it wasn't just a thin little piece of plastic that they were going through. They gave them some support. So that's what I did there. That's that back piece. And then of course you can see where I filled in the other holes that weren't desired to me. So that's all I can really talk about on this piece. You could get really crazy with this. You could change the hinges. You could, anyway, at the end of the day, you could just scratch build it your way. So I wanted to have fun with this kit and just get it together. So this is all ready for paint. I just got to get things together, get things done. But I wanted to show you where I'm at so far. And this piece here doesn't even have to really glue in. You can just pop that in. And then slide it back, and then that gets held in by the piece there. When you look straight in here, that's all finished off. When you paint that and you go to put the ramps in, that now is sort of a finished compartment, and that's why I did that. So this gray plastic is only a different color because I used a piece out of a model kit that was flat to fill this in instead of styrene, just so that when you go to sand this, styrene is a little softer than the plastic that's molded, injection molded. So when you put it on there and you go to sand that and body work it, I like something that's the same consistency. So that's that. Now, let's get rid of some pieces here. Now let's talk about the chassis. Originally, the truck comes with a one-piece chassis here. Let me just pop this engine out here so it doesn't fall out. Okay, so it comes with a chassis that looks like this, and then what you're supposed to do is you trim off the sides here. It then comes with a second differential appearing piece that you put on the back, and then you put your axles through and you have your 6 wheels. What I opted to do was sort of duplicate the simplicity of this. This doesn't have a lot of detail, and neither does the rest of the chassis. So what I have done is just cut it off, glued some styrene in here, extended the chassis to the length I wanted. So underneath, when this is all together, that's the look that it has. And this isn't complete. This is just the chassis, frame rails, and cross members. I plan on taking maybe this piece or another differential, cutting a pumpkin, putting over top for detail, running a shaft into here, then running another piece of styrene to make the drive shaft, and then I can do my exhaust instead of having the exhaust exit out the side or wherever you want to make it exit. Also, this has long trailing arm suspension, which this would have leaf springs. But anyway, there's not a lot of detail going to go on under here. It's not one of the models you're putting on a mirror. You want to see the underside. I'm just going to paint the chassis black, paint the underside of the box, and all of that stuff. And you just sort of pick out some details like exhaust. I can now make the exhaust exit however I'd like to make it on the model. So that's what I've done there. I just put an axle through here. The front, same idea, just ran the axle through, and now that's the front of it. Okay, I can take the chassis off here. Again, what I've done here is I made the cab engage on this little clip that I made, and the cab then engages on those 2 clips, and then when you put it together, the model holds itself together quite well. And the main reason I did it was because of alignment. I found that there's nothing to hold this cab from flopping around, and so I wanted to be able, when you do finally glue it together, it's not like the cab is really close to this side or anything like that. Now we can talk about, also the wheels. The back wheels, I use deep dish rims. This is the newest release, the California Highway Patrol from MPC, but I had some extra wheels from some of those kits before. They come with a deep dish wheel that I opted to use for the back, and glued it together with the backing. And once you pop the tires on, then it's sort of they're on there. I used the tires that came in this model kit, minus the white walls. They were pad printed and beautiful, but they weren't exactly centered, so they were a little offset, which was a little disappointing. So I ended up just using some product and taking the white wall off, and then putting the tires on, sanding detail. These hubcaps that are on here I used out of the Chevy van kit from the 70s. It also came in the A-Team van. So I got quite a few sets of these hubcaps, and I opted to dechrome them and just paint them, and I gave the wheel a little bit of a wash. They look a little dirtier than I wanted, but anyway, it brings out the detail. So it's a white wheel with the hubcaps, and then the body will get painted. So the wheels are basically done for this model. And the front wheels, I don't know what the rims exactly, what kit they came out of, but the same idea, the hubcap, the wheel, and that's how I finished that off. It looks like almost like a 3/4 ton or 1 ton setup. This will be badged as a C30. That's the plan, if I can make some C30 badges. If not, it's just you'll just see the truck. So I did add the cab lights, as you can see in this picture here, where I had drawn it out with a pencil and made some lines to line up the cab lights, and then dechromed the cab lights, glued them on so that they're part of the body, they're not going to fall off. Paint everything, pick it off. With that, they're not going to fall off the model, and you're not trying to line up a cab light onto a painted surface and get yourself into some trouble there. So that's what I opted to do there. The grill, I had actually dechromed it, glued it into the body. There was a lot of fitment issues here. There was a terrible gap along the side. So by gluing this in, I was able to reshape the fender, get everything to line up. I rescribed the line between the separation line between the grill and the fender. I added some support for that grill because there's really not much to glue to. It's attached to the bumper. That whole thing sits up against the bottom, and the grill just kind of floats there. So I also added a trim piece on the bottom here to fill in that space. Okay, I also took all the trim off the side of the cab. This is an old kit that somebody had sort of worked on and built, and you can see how it comes with some molding on the side, some detail lettering here describing that it's a C10, but it's no longer a C10. That's how the cab comes. Also, you'll notice that if you look down the side of the cab, this rocker panel gets fatter and bigger. Also, it gets wider at the bottom, and it's very thick here. So I had to take a file and file this down so that the cab looks fairly straight when you look down the side of it, and it has a nice line there. So that's one of the things I had to do. Another thing I had to do was scribe the doors a little deeper, and got a little more work to do because of that. The scribing was not 100% perfect, but it'll work. So what I'll do is I'll pick the grill off, I'll tape it off when I paint it, and then when I finish painting it, I'll tape the grill off and paint the grill a different color and then detail it up. So it's part of the model. The other thing I'm on the fence about is just gluing this hood down, because I can't get it to sit straight. It's high in this corner. If you see the gap, if I put the gap down here, I have now a gap in the front corner, because this hood has a tremendous twist in it that I have not been able to get out. And I've looked at some of my older kits, and they all have this twist in it, and it just, I don't like the way it fits. So to make the model look good, I think I'm just going to glue the hood down and just leave it as a curbside. The thing about this model is that you know, it sort of is, it's a display stand for a model that's got much more detail on it, like a race car or another car. So for me, having the hood open is not really that important on this model, so that's why I'm just going to probably just glue the hood down. But before that, I have to get some paint in here, so when you look from the bottom, I want it to still look good. That's why I painted and detailed up this small block Chevy that the kit comes with. I even added a little more detail to the fuel pump. I glued a little piece on here to make it look a little more correct. So when you look from the bottom of this model, with the black chassis that'll be painted and all of that stuff, everything lines up, the exhaust. It's not going to be perfect, but at least it'll look decent. So I'll still put the radiator in, but I won't have to worry about finishing off the top of this engine. That's basically everything that needs to be on there, except for I still have to put the belts and fan accessory, all that kind of stuff on the front. So I haven't yet decided to glue the hood down, but the option is there. And one of the other reasons why gluing it down wouldn't bother me is this is actually, if you're familiar with 67 to 72 Chevy pickup trucks, this is basically a 66 and older design inner fender well. This should look like the Jimmy under the hood, and this has got rounded inner fender wells. I mean, it's a little bland, but that's okay. You can with a bland model, you can always dress it up. So you can add detail, you can add the battery, you can add the heater box, you can do all that kind of stuff. But this is how the inner fender well should look on this truck model. So if you're familiar with those trucks, you would know that that's and it doesn't really matter to me if the hood's glued down. I don't mind covering up that. It's not a big deal. Speaking of cabs, that's the truck there and truck cab. What I wanted to show you was, let's say you're not a Chevy guy and you want this ramp truck and you want to build it. It doesn't matter, even if you build it with tandem, whatever you want to do, you can have fun with this model. If you wanted to, you could pick up 78 Dodge and you could put yourself a Dodge cab on there. I'm not, you know, obviously this has a small block Chevy and the Chevy chassis, but you could do these modifications and you could make this a Dodge truck if you wanted to have a Dodge race car on the back or a Dodge product. I just wanted to show you how that fits and how that looks. Okay. Or you could, if you're a Ford guy, you could pick up this 1978 Ford truck and you could put a Ford cab on the front of this, and you could have a Ford race car on the back and that sort of thing. So I just wanted to show you possibilities of what you could do with this ramp truck model, other than just building it out of the box. I was very close to putting a Dodge cab on the front of this, but I decided to go with the Chevy model. So that's one of the things I wanted to point out to you. What else can I talk about? Well, it's a fun kit and I recommend it for anybody who enjoys modeling. Also, I did dechrome the bumper because I plan on painting the bumper white on this model instead of chrome. It's in white plastic right now, but it will get painted. So I just wanted to show you too how, with the bumper on here, how that front end will look. So you see, by putting that filler piece in, there's no gap there. The bumper fits nice. I think that'll look great. And that's with the hood on it. So there you have it. I kind of think if there's anything else I need to tell you about this model, not much else to say. I think we got it with the latches, the ramps, all the modifications to the body. So there you go. 1972 Chevy ramp truck model kit build up. All that's left now is paint, so next time you see it, it'll be finished. I hope to get that up in a few weeks for you. So if you like these videos, please subscribe, hit that bell for notifications, and have yourself a great day. Thank you.